Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to discuss about the new Sitecore 10.5 release. If you just read about Sitecore 10.5 release notes and thought cool, nicer UI, some fixes, I'd stop you right there. Because if you are the person actually responsible for keeping an enterprise Sitecore environment running, that's the least interesting part of this release. The real story in 10.5 isn't in content editor. It's underneath it. In your Solr topology, your container stack, your deployment pipeline, your authentication config. Stick with me. In next 10 minutes, I'll walk you through why I'm treating this as an infrastructure release, not a feature release, and what I would actually test first if I were leading this upgrade. Yeah, so here's the framing I've been using with clients. Most releases get talked about in terms of features, new look, new capabilities, some bug fixes. Totally fine. Way to talk about it if you're a content author. But if you're an architect or a lead engineer, I would call 10.5 a platform reset release, not an innovation release. Sitecore's fast innovation, the AI stuff, the agentic experiences, composable architecture, that's all happening on the SaaS side. XP and XM 10.5 have a quieter, less glamorous job, keeping everyone still running private cloud, PaaS, or traditional enterprise deployments on infrastructure that's actually supported and current. If you're running a large implementation, that quiet job matters more uh, to you than anything than the in the highlight reel. If I were evaluating this upgrade, the first thing I would open isn't content editor. It is the infrastructure diagram. I'd be asking things like, what version of Windows are these hosts actually running? What does the Solr topology looks like after years of customization? How are containers built and pushed through the pipeline right now? How is serialization handled? How are packages actually deployed? Not how the documentation says they should be, but how your team does it on a Tuesday afternoon. I put together this table for exactly this reason, mapping the old assumption teams tend to carry against what 10.5 actually makes you reconsider. This tells you more about upgrade difficulty than any change log will. If I had to pick one area to spend most of the upgrade budget on, it's Solr. Every time such upgrades are almost never a clean version bump, especially on an environment that's been running for years. You've got custom core schema tweaks nobody remembers the reasoning for. SolrCloud, aliases, deployment script held together by one engineer's memory. Move all that into Solr 10 and suddenly your search tire is its own migration project, whether you planned for that or not. So here is the mindset shift I would make. Don't think upgrade Sitecore then rebuild the indexes. Think we are introducing a new search platform and now we need to prove Sitecore behaves correctly on it. So you have to provision separately, right? Then validate authentication, then rebuild indexes, then run app against new environment. And then you have to decommission the old one. And also you need to pay close attention to SolrCloud aliases and switch on rebuild behavior specifically. Now here's the trap. An index can look completely healthy while your application is quietly pointed at the wrong one. Those failures don't show up when someone's clicking around content editor. They show up during publishing or during deployment, usually at the worst possible time. Yes. So next up, I think the containers, because this is a classic case of Sitecore upgrade quietly turning into an infrastructure upgrade. If your org runs window containers, don't treat the new Sitecore images as an application only change. Work the whole chain, like Sitecore image, Windows base image, container runtime, host OS, orchestration platform, deployment pipeline. Change one link and you can expose assumptions baked into a completely different one. So my sincere advice is verify your supported Windows server and container combinations before anyone touches Sitecore config. Otherwise, you will spend 2 days debugging a Sitecore 10.5 bug that's actually just a host compatibility issue that had nothing to do with Sitecore. Again, this is one of the most, I would say, interesting part. Like one thing that I would like to push clients on, even if it's little uncomfortable, that if your deployment process still leans on uploading packages through admin interfaces, this is a good moment to question that. Not because packages are evil, but ask yourself honestly, is package-driven deployment still the right foundation for a modern CI/CD process? Serialization plus Sitecore CLI gets you something packages never really delivered never really delivered repeatability. A deployment should be something your pipeline can reproduce on its own, not something that only works because Dave remembers which package where and in what order. If that's your situation, you have found technical depth bigger than the version number. Use the 10.5 upgrade as an excuse to finally deal with it. Yes, there are some changes that you won't notice right away, I would say, and like have become kind of a favorite part for this release. The changes that never make the marketing summary but end up mattering more than the headline features. So, for example, small shift in URLs, building behavior, cache eviction, line tracking, an author will never notice. But if you build custom logic anywhere near those areas, you will notice. So go read the detailed release notes, not just the summary. Ask yourself, do we have a custom URL logic? Are we reusing mutable config object somewhere? If yes, we shouldn't. Do we depend on specific cache clearing timing? These aren't really features. They are compatibility landmines, and in my experience, they actually matter more during an upgrade than anything on the feature list. Okay, now let's get to the interesting part, what everyone has been already talking about. It's the UI refresh. And I feel it's genuinely nicer. Authors will notice and they will definitely like it. But don't sell this internally as though content editor turned into XMCloud pages. It didn't. Same authoring model underneath, just a more current coat of paint. If someone on your team asks, so do we get the modern SaaS authoring experience now? That's the expectation to correct early, not 2 weeks before you go live. And if you have customized speak or share dialogues layered on CSS overrides or hooked into content editor's DOM structure, don't assume this is purely cosmetic. Standard dialogues can change underneath you and keep working fine. A CSS selector targeting some internal element can break without warning. Put your customizations through regression testing regardless of whether you expect trouble or not. Okay, so this is again an interesting part, that what we need to test first. So if I'm running this upgrade, here's my actual test priority. Not a generic like does the site load checklist, but like one is search index rebuilds, incremental updates, publishing, aliases, switch on rebuild, multiple languages, the actual query or app runs, right? If I talk about the second one is publishing. Large operations, related item publishing, scheduled publishing, publishing under live traffic. So this is something that that we need to test. Third thing, definitely, as I mentioned earlier, also I've emphasized enough on it, that is serialization. Deploy a real serialized solution into a genuinely clean environment and see what breaks. I think that's the most interesting part. The fourth one definitely is the headless scenarios. So you need to test the actual routes and queries your front end depends on, not just the standard pages. And then the fifth one is your custom integrations, messaging, auth, background jobs. This is where the oldest assumptions tend to hide. Okay, so what I wouldn't use 10.5 to solve. So one more thing before you go, if the real reason you want to upgrade is SaaS operations, visual page composition, AI assisted authoring, composable architecture, then 10.5 isn't that answer. It modernizes the foundation under what you already have. That's valuable, but it's a different decision than moving to XM Cloud. And I would keep those two conversations separate. So here's how I would sum it up. 10.5, it's not really Sitecore got nicer UI. It is how long can you keep running Sitecore on a modern supported foundation without being forced into SaaS migration you are not ready for. For a lot of enterprise teams, regulatory concerns, data residency, big existing XP investments, that question is whole ball game. If your upgrade plan was has one line item that says upgrade site code packages to 10.5, stop the meeting. Ask what you're doing about everything underneath it. That's where the real work starts. So I will end this video with this. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel.